I used to work at a Dollar Tree in a small town just outside the USA. It wasn't much, but it paid the bills. I was 22, fresh out of community college, and still figuring out what I wanted to do. The store was open until 10 p.m., but I often stayed late to help close, counting registers, sweeping aisles, locking up. It was an easy routine, until one night it wasn't. That night started like any other. It was a Wednesday, slow, quiet, and kind of eerie the way all big box stores feel when they're almost empty. My manager, Lisa, had called out sick, which left just me and another employee, Darren, to close up. Darren was in the back room doing inventory. I was up front zoning out as I wiped down the checkout counter. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the air. I could hear the faint buzz of the refrigeration unit by the drink coolers. Everything was normal, boring even. Then the door chime rang. It startled me because it was already 9:47 and we rarely got customers that late. I looked up expecting a last-minute shopper. Instead, it was a man. He was tall, maybe 6'2", wearing an old denim jacket and jeans that looked dirty, like he'd been working outside all day. His hair was greasy and stringy, hanging just above his shoulders. The thing that caught me, though, was how pale he was, like he hadn't seen the sun in weeks. He didn't grab a cart, didn't say hello, just drifted slowly into the aisles. I called out, "Hey, we close in 10 minutes. He didn't answer, didn't even glance at me, just kept walking, dragging his hand along the shelf edges as he moved toward the back of the store. I figured he was one of those customers who liked to take their time, so I went back to wiping the counter. But after a couple of minutes, I realized I hadn't heard him move again. No footsteps, no sound of packages shifting, nothing. I leaned over the counter and looked down the aisles. Empty. "Darren?" I called. No response. I sighed and decided to find the guy myself. I didn't want to get in trouble for having someone still in the store after close. The aisles were long and narrow, lined with cheap toys, off-brand snacks, plastic bins, all the usual junk. I checked everyone, expecting to find the guy staring at some random shelf like he'd lost track of time. But there was no one. I made it to the back and saw Darren crouched near the stockroom door, scanning barcodes on a box of cleaning supplies. "Hey," I said, "did you see that guy come through here?" Tall denim jacket. Darren looked up, confused. "What guy?" I frowned. "He came in like 5 minutes ago." He shrugged. "Haven't seen anybody." That made my stomach twist a little. There was no other exit besides the front doors, and I hadn't heard them open again. I started walking back toward the registers, trying to convince myself maybe he'd left quietly and I'd just missed it. But when I reached the front, I froze. A $1 bill was sitting on the counter. I hadn't noticed it before. It was folded neatly, too neatly, into a tiny square. I picked it up, and that's when I saw the writing on it. In red ink, scrawled across the surface, were 2 words. "Help me." At first, I thought it was some weird prank, maybe one of those bills people scribble on as a joke, but the handwriting, it looked shaky, uneven, like someone had written it in a hurry. Something about it made my skin crawl. I looked around again, half expecting the guy to pop out from an aisle laughing. Nothing. Just that faint hum of the lights and the ticking of the wall clock. I went to find Darren again, but before I could reach the back, I heard a thud. A deep, heavy sound like something hitting the floor. I ran toward it. "Darren?" He was gone. The box he'd been scanning was on its side, contents scattered across the floor. The stockroom door was open just a crack. I pushed it wider and called his name again. No answer. The back room smelled like cardboard and dust. The overhead light flickered, casting harsh shadows over the metal shelving. Everything looked normal except for one thing. In the far corner, there was a stack of those large black garbage bags we used for disposal. One of them was moving, just barely. A faint twitch, like something inside had shifted. I froze. My first thought was a rat. Maybe one had gotten trapped inside. But then I noticed the shape beneath the plastic. It wasn't small. It was human-sized. My heart started hammering. "Darren?" I said, barely above a whisper. The bag stopped moving. I took a step closer. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull the edge of the plastic open. Inside wasn't Darren. It was clothing. Piled up, dirty, worn-out clothing, and right on top, that same denim jacket. I stumbled back, feeling like my lungs had been punched empty. That guy hadn't left. He'd been in here. Somehow. Maybe even before we closed. I bolted for the front of the store. My only thought was to get out, call the police, something, but when I got to the registers, the automatic doors wouldn't open. They were locked. We never locked them from the inside, not until we were leaving. I tried again, pulling, pushing, nothing. Then I heard something behind me, a shuffle, slow and deliberate. I turned around. Standing at the end of the aisle was the man. The same denim jacket, but his face looked wrong now. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, darting around like he was seeing something I couldn't. He had a faint grin twitching at the corners of his mouth, and he was holding something in his hand. A box cutter. I took a step back. "Hey man, look, I don't know what you want, but..." He started walking toward me. I backed up faster, bumping into a display of paper towels. My voice broke when I yelled, "Darren! Call 911. But Darren didn't answer. The man's steps were uneven, dragging. He mumbled something I couldn't make it out at first. Then I realized he was repeating a phrase, over and over. "I work here too. I work here too. I work here too." I don't remember deciding to run, my body just did it. I sprinted past him, straight toward the back room. He shouted something behind me, a guttural noise, and I heard the sound of metal scraping against the floor. The box cutter. I slammed the stockroom door shut and threw the lock, breathing so hard it felt like my chest was going to split open. I grabbed my phone, but of course no signal. We barely got reception in that building. There was a small emergency exit in the back, but it was alarmed. If I pushed it, the whole store would ring out, and maybe that was a good thing. I started toward it, but then I saw movement through the little wired glass window in the stockroom door. He was standing right outside, staring at me. His head tilted slightly like he was studying me. Then he lifted the box cutter and started dragging it slowly across the door, carving something into the wood. When he finally stopped, I could make out the words, "I worked here first." Something in me just broke. I grabbed the emergency bar and shoved it. The alarm blared so loud it felt like my ears would burst, but I didn't care. I ran. Out into the cold night air, down the empty parking lot, across the street to the gas station where I begged the clerk to call the cops. By the time they got there, the store was empty. No man, no sign of a break-in, nothing carved into the door. Even the dollar bill was gone. They found Darren about an hour later, wandering behind the store, dazed and confused. He had a small cut on his neck, shallow but deliberate, and he couldn't remember anything after I'd talked to him in the stockroom. They pulled the security footage the next day, and this is the part that still keeps me up at night. The cameras caught everything: me cleaning, the man walking in, even me going to find him. But after that, it gets strange. In the footage where I walk past each aisle looking for him, he isn't there. Not once. Even when I clearly saw him, even when I spoke to him, the cameras only show me talking to empty space. But what's worse, in one frame right before I run to the back, you can see the denim jacket hanging from a hook near the storage door, just swinging there like someone had brushed past it seconds before. The police called it a stress-induced episode, said I must have panicked, imagined things under pressure. They even suggested maybe Darren had been hurt by accident while handling box cutters, that we both got spooked and overreacted. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard, and I still think about that man's words. I worked here first. I quit a week later. I couldn't go back, but sometimes late at night I'll pass another Dollar Tree on my way home from my new job, and I'll see the lights still on, empty aisles, quiet as a graveyard, and I'll get that same chill down my spine, because I can't stop wondering if he's still out there somewhere waiting for another night shift to start. I never thought a simple trip to a Dollar Tree could turn into one of the most unnerving experiences of my life. Honestly, I still can't quite explain everything that happened that day, and even months later it sticks with me like a bad taste in the back of my throat. It started as a normal Thursday evening. I had just gotten off work and I needed a few things for the apartment, some cleaning supplies, a pack of batteries, and maybe a cheap snack or two. Dollar Tree was only a few minutes away, so I figured it would be quick and easy. Nothing about that plan hinted at how strange the night was going to become. The store was nearly empty when I walked in, which I normally enjoy. I like it when there's space to move, when you can browse without bumping into people or waiting behind someone for the last pack of paper towels. I grabbed a cart and started down the first aisle, which was full of cleaning supplies and random home goods. At first, everything was normal. I was picking out some dish soap when I noticed something slightly off. The shelves along the side wall had a few items knocked over, nothing dramatic, just cans and boxes lying sideways. I assumed it had been like that all day and didn't think much of it. Then I heard it, a loud, sharp clatter from the back of the store. I froze for a second, thinking maybe someone had dropped something, but no one came running or apologized. It was the kind of sound that just hangs in the air for a second before the silence returns. And in that silence, I realized the store was even emptier than I thought. The only person I saw was the cashier at the front. I shrugged it off and kept moving. Maybe I was imagining things. I went down the aisle for snacks. That's when I noticed the smell. It was faint at first, just a slight chemical tang that didn't belong. But then I noticed a sort of sticky film along the bottom shelf of the candy section. It looked like someone had spilled something and wiped it half-heartedly. I recoiled a little, thinking I'd touch it by accident. I moved on, figuring I'd just pick up what I needed and leave. But then I saw the first really weird thing. A cart, just sitting in the middle of an aisle, completely full. Not unusual in itself, except that it was filled with things that didn't make sense. It had a bunch of random household items, paper towels, batteries, cleaning spray, but also a few things that seemed out of place. A cheap alarm clock, a small kitchen knife, a pack of baby wipes. Nothing alarming individually, but the combination felt off. Like someone had grabbed things in a hurry without thinking. I thought about moving the cart out of the way. Maybe it belonged to a customer who was still in the store somewhere. But when I walked closer, I noticed the cart wasn't just randomly abandoned. It had the handle bent slightly, like it had been rammed into something, and the wheels were scratched on one side. I remember feeling a little chill at that point, though I still couldn't explain why. I kept moving faster now, trying to get through my list. By the time I got to the aisle with batteries and light bulbs, the quiet of the store felt oppressive. Not the comfortable quiet of an empty shop, but the kind of quiet that makes your own breathing sound too loud. I was halfway through checking the shelves when I noticed the back door of the store. Dollar Tree has one of those small metal doors with a tiny window at the top that leads to the loading dock. Usually it's locked during business hours, but tonight it was slightly ajar. I don't know what made me look, but I did, and the second I did, I felt this weird cold knot in my stomach. The door wasn't moving. Nothing looked out of place outside, but the fact it was ajar at all was unsettling. Dollar Tree employees don't just leave doors like that, not at night. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a delivery earlier hadn't been properly closed. Maybe the wind had shifted it. I tried to focus on my shopping. I grabbed a pack of batteries and a couple of cleaning sponges and headed for the checkout. The cashier was a young guy, maybe in his early 20s. He was scrolling on his phone and barely looked up when I placed my items on the counter. I remember catching his eyes for just a second, and I could have sworn there was a flicker of worry there. Then he smiled, the kind of forced professional smile, and went back to his phone. I paid and pushed my cart toward the door, but that's when I saw it. Sitting near the front of the store, right by the registers, was a small folding chair. It was facing the aisles like someone had been sitting there watching people shop. And on the chair there was a notebook. I froze. The notebook was plain, small, with a black cover. There was no one nearby, and I didn't see anyone leave it. My first thought was maybe an employee had dropped it, but I didn't remember seeing anyone take a break in that area. The feeling in my chest started to tighten. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked closer and picked up the notebook. The first few pages were empty, but then I flipped to a random page, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were lists of items, Dollar Tree items, but not just random shopping lists. The items were written with strange notes next to them. Times, numbers, and in some cases, single words that didn't make sense. 10:45 p.m., aisle 4, check stock. 11:10 p.m., aisle 7, replace. 12:02 a.m., back door open. It looked like someone was planning something, tracking the store, almost like it was a schedule or a checklist. I dropped the notebook back on the chair and stepped back. My mind was racing. Who would make a list like that? Why would they be in a store tracking items at specific times and noting when the back door was open? I wanted to leave immediately, but part of me wanted to check if anyone else was in the store. My brain kept arguing with itself. It's nothing. Just someone's weird hobby, just a notebook, nothing to worry about. But every instinct I had was screaming at me to go. I wheeled my cart toward the exit, glancing at the aisles as I went. That's when I noticed something I'll never forget. On the bottom shelf of aisle 6, someone had lined up cans. Just ordinary canned vegetables, but they weren't messy, they weren't tipped over, they were arranged, spaced out perfectly, all facing the same direction. It felt deliberate. Too deliberate. I quickened my pace, my hands gripping the cart tighter than necessary. The fluorescent lights above flickered for a moment, and the whole store seemed darker than it should have. I reached the door, but just before I pulled it open, I heard a voice. It was quiet but clear. "Don't touch anything." I froze. There was no one around me, no other customers. The voice was low, calm, almost casual, but it carried a weight that made my blood run cold. I looked around the front area, the registers, the aisles, but there was no one. I don't know why I didn't run out screaming. I just opened the door and stepped into the parking lot, heart hammering, adrenaline flooding through me. I loaded my bags into the car as quickly as I could, not daring to look back at the store. When I got home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about that Dollar Tree was wrong. I kept thinking about the notebook, the door, the oddly arranged cans, and the cart with random items. Who was keeping track of the store like that? And more importantly, why? I told a friend about it a few days later. He laughed at first, said I was overreacting, that Dollar Tree was just weird sometimes. But I knew what I had seen, and I knew what I had felt. A few weeks later, I passed by the same Dollar Tree again. The parking lot was empty just like before, and I couldn't help but glance inside. The front doors were closed, the lights on, everything seemingly normal. But I didn't go in. I couldn't. I'll never forget the feeling of walking through that store, thinking it was just another normal shopping trip, only to realize that normal is sometimes the scariest thing of all. That someone could sit in a chair in a Dollar Tree making lists, planning I don't know what, and the place would look perfectly ordinary. Even now, months later, I have this habit whenever I enter any store, especially late at night. I look at the aisles a little longer. I check the corners, I glance at the doors. Not because I expect to see anything supernatural, but because I know how easily something can hide in plain sight, and how ordinary spaces can hold secrets that make your skin crawl. Dollar Tree will never feel the same to me again. What I experienced wasn't supernatural. It wasn't ghosts or shadows, it was just human. And sometimes knowing it's human makes it far worse. Because the thought that someone was planning something inside that store, doing it quietly, calculating everything down to the smallest detail, that thought has never left me. And I'm not sure it ever will. I've never told anyone this story before, not my family, not my friends, not even the police. And I know how that sounds, like I'm hiding something. But after what happened, I just wanted to forget it ever existed. It started about 2 years ago in a small town outside of Dayton, Ohio. I had just moved there after losing my job in Cincinnati. The rent was cheap, the people were friendly enough, and there was a Dollar Tree right down the street from my apartment, which back then was basically my grocery store. You know that kind of quiet desperation where every dollar counts? That was me. I'd walk down there every few days, grab frozen dinners, toothpaste, maybe a pack of socks. I liked the place. It was bright, organized, predictable. It made me feel safe, in a weird way. But safety can be a lie. The day everything went wrong was a Thursday evening, late March. I remember because it was one of these gray Ohio days where it looks like it might snow, even though it's already spring. I got there about an hour before closing. The store was nearly empty, just one cashier and maybe two other shoppers. I grabbed a basket and started walking the aisles. Everything felt normal, ordinary, until I noticed the smell. It was faint at first, something sour, metallic, like old pennies mixed with bleach. I figured maybe someone spilled a cleaning product. But the longer I stayed, the worse it got. It wasn't coming from any one spot either. It just seemed to hang in the air, heavier in certain aisles. I brushed it off and grabbed what I needed: paper towels, ramen, some frozen burritos, the usual. But when I got to the freezer section, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. One of the glass doors, the one with the frozen dinners, had condensation all over the inside, dripping down like it hadn't been closed properly in hours. There was a streak down the glass, almost like a handprint, except the fingers were too long or maybe smudged. I told myself it was just someone leaning on it, but still it didn't sit right with me. Then I saw the light flicker, just once overhead. The buzzing hum of the fluorescent stopped for a second. You know that strange dead silence when all the electricity seems to pause? That's what it felt like. Then the lights came back, humming again like nothing happened. That's when I realized the store was quiet, too quiet. The cashier wasn't at the register anymore. Her stool was empty, receipt paper hanging loose like she'd walked off in the middle of ringing someone up. "Hello?" I called out, half joking. "You guys closing early or something?" No answer. I walked toward the back of the store, toward the stockroom door. It was open a few inches, just enough to see dim light inside. I could hear this thudding sound, not footsteps, more like something heavy being dragged. I stopped. My first thought was that maybe an employee had dropped a box or hurt themselves. But the longer I listened, the less it sounded like that. The rhythm was too deliberate. Drag, pause, drag, pause. I set my basket down. My hands felt clammy. "Hello? You okay back there?" Nothing, just that slow, awful dragging noise. Then it stopped altogether. I took one step toward the stockroom and then something hit the metal door from the inside. Hard. The whole thing rattled like someone had slammed into it. I froze. My body told me to run, but my brain, my stupid, curious brain, wanted to know what was happening. I pushed the door open. It was dim inside, lit only by a flickering bulb near the ceiling. The shelves were half empty, boxes stacked everywhere. I didn't see anyone, but there was a trail of red across the concrete floor, a long, thin smear that led toward the back wall. It looked like someone had tried to clean it up too. There were streaks of paper towels stuck to the ground, smeared with pinkish liquid. I remember whispering to myself, "No, no, no," because it didn't feel real, like I'd walked into a scene I wasn't supposed to see. Then from somewhere deeper in the stockroom, a voice said quietly, "We're closed." I can't describe how wrong that voice sounded. It was calm, almost polite, but it didn't sound like the cashier. It sounded like someone trying to imitate her, the tone, the rhythm, but just off. I backed up, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The door creaked shut behind me and I turned and ran. I didn't look back. When I reached the front, the automatic doors didn't open. I ran right into the glass, hard enough to make my nose bleed. I tried the handle, but it was locked. The lights started flickering again. I could see my own reflection, pale, shaking, a little bit of blood running down my lip. And then in that reflection, I saw movement behind me. Someone was standing in the middle of the aisle, not moving, just watching. I turned around fast and the aisle was empty. That was all I needed. I grabbed the emergency exit bar and shoved it with everything I had. The alarm went off, shrill and deafening, and cold air rushed in from outside. I ran across the parking lot without looking back once. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment 3 blocks away. I locked the door, pulled the curtain shut, and sat on the floor for hours, shaking. The next morning I told myself it had to be a panic attack. Maybe a prank, maybe I misheard, missaw, anything to make it normal again. But when I went back later that day, the Dollar Tree was closed. Big yellow tape across the doors. I asked the guy from the laundromat next door what happened. He just shook his head and said, "Some kind of accident last night. They're saying gas leak," but he trailed off. He wouldn't finish the sentence. Over the next few weeks, I kept checking the news, but there was nothing. No story, no mention, not even a notice about repairs. Eventually, the store reopened under new management. Brighter paint, new staff, everything spotless. But I never stepped foot inside again. Then, about 6 months later, I was driving through another part of town, and I saw something that made my stomach drop. Another Dollar Tree, same layout, same design, everything identical. Except through the glass doors, I saw a woman behind the counter who looked exactly like the cashier from that night. Same haircut, same posture, same green vest. I pulled over, stared for a long time. When she looked up, our eyes met and she smiled. The same calm, too wide smile I remembered from that voice in the stockroom. I drove away, fast. After that, weird things started happening around my apartment. Small things, but enough to get under my skin. Plastic bags from Dollar Tree showing up in my kitchen trash even though I hadn't been there. A receipt left on my counter with the date and time from that night, the night of the gas leak. Once, I found a single frozen burrito sitting on my porch, still cold like it had just come from a freezer. I moved 3 months later, packed my stuff and left the state completely. Now every time I see a Dollar Tree anywhere in any city, I feel that same cold pit in my stomach. The smell of pennies and bleach comes rushing back. I know it sounds insane. I know what you're thinking. It was just a coincidence, a bad night, a mix-up. But there's one thing that keeps me up at night. A week after I moved, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. There was silence at first, just static. Then a familiar voice said, "We're open now." And in the background, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. I hung up and changed my number the next day. That was over a year ago. But last week, I found a Dollar Tree receipt tucked under my windshield wiper. No date, no location printed. Just one line of text. Thank you for coming back. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more horror